I'm giving now the floor to Mr. Peter Lloyd, who will be introducing our speaker today, Mr. Walter von Redding. Mr. Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Miriam, and welcome back, everyone. Our final segment this afternoon is a very timely and important presentation on the benefits of whole grain and high fiber nutrition during this global pandemic of COVID-19. Our presenter on this important topic is Walter von Redding, Director of the Business Unit Ingredients for the Bakels Company in Switzerland. The Bakels Company has been manufacturing, distributing, and technically supporting high-quality bakery ingredients to the global market since 1904. Herr von Redding has extensive international experience in grain-based research projects and grain processing technologies. And during his 16-year association with the Bühler Group, he developed and successfully rolled out new innovative solutions for the grain and food processing industries. Since April 2020, Walter has assumed responsibility for the flour ingredients business of the Bakels Group in collaboration with Bühler. A highly respected member of the grain and food processing industry as well as academia, Walter holds a bachelor's degree in economics, a master's in food engineering, and an MBA with focus on strategic innovations with new technologies. He is an active member of international organizations like the Whole Grain Initiative, Health Grain Forum, and the Food Fortification Initiative. Welcome, Herr Walter, and over to you.
Thank you, Peter, for the introduction. Very nice. I want also to welcome everybody to this last presentation of this session. And I'm also very grateful to the organizing committee that I have the opportunity to speak about here a special topic. A topic is not just related to my back career, but also most actual today, looking at the situation with the COVID-19. And I personally think the food and the grain processing industry has a big responsibility, but also opportunity, I would say, to be part to make a better world, because healthy nutrition, healthy lifestyle, but also food security under this pandemic is becoming a key topic globally. And we see this also here in Switzerland, as for example, now the second wave is hitting us hardly, and we don't know what will happen next week in terms of economic restriction and also taking measurement. When we look also at the Food Sustainability Council, the different topics, so pandemics will have an impact on food security, definitely. It will have also an impact on people who are vulnerable people, elderly people, people in developing countries. And that's why I want to take the opportunity to talk about what we can do in the grain processing industry to make an impact to the future of this industry. Looking at the COVID-19 exposes, it creates disparity in terms of the food system, in terms of preventing nutrition and how we respond to crisis. I would say resilient, sustainable food and health system has never been that important as it is today. So we are in an industry where we really have the opportunity to take over responsibility and to make an impact. Specifically also looking at elderly people, are those who have pre-existing conditions such as a weakened immune system or poor metabolic health, like they have mostly in developing countries, but also in highly developed countries. So it means also reversing the obesity epidemic would also lessen the burden on our healthcare system, as obesity is not only one of the costliest health conditions, but also definitely a major risk of COVID-19 hospitalization and complications. I will come to that later on. Looking at the double burden of obesity and malnutrition, now COVID-19 hits the most vulnerable, as I mentioned already. Looking really at the emerging countries where malnutrition, food security is at risk, as we have seen also on the World Health Report. And as you might have recognized, the World Food Programme just got a Nobel Prize in terms of how they support, I would say, countries globally in the market under this crisis. And I think that's a very important signal how we also have taken over this responsibility. Looking here at the global scale in terms of the burden we face. Look at the US, where we have the obesity, for example, as a good example, but also in Europe. But in Africa, where we have overweight and stunting, stunting is really related to malnutrition, strongly to malnutrition, but also looking like in India, where we have anemia and stunting, also because of poor nutrition. And this will be even higher affected by this COVID-19, as we see also in the media. Looking at elderly people, and I count myself also to somebody who is getting into that age, so we see certain degenerative disease, like the muscle mass, get reduced, also the bone density, importantly also the mental performance, strongly. This is strongly also related to the immune system within our body. I will come to that. What is the function of the digestive system and the fiber? Then definitely cardiovascular disease, which is the #1 factor for that globally, supported also by antioxidative support to avoid this in the bioactive components, and the digestive systems which really get reduced, and the strengths. I will explain in details how this works. Another topic which gets a little bit more forgotten now, I would say, is about sustainability. Looking 2 years ahead, everybody had this on the agenda. Now it looks like we are back to square one, and then we talk here about the basics. But it doesn't mean we have to leave this out. We have to focus strongly also on sustainability to create a better world in terms of looking at plant-based food and less meat consumption. This is something which we have to take seriously in the future. And there definitely the grain processing industry, not just with wheat, but also with pulses, Asian grain, have great opportunity to make a big impact. Looking at the whole grain components and the benefits, I think most of the millers are aware what's in there, but maybe they do not really be fully aware of the values of the different components. We have spoken today earlier on about the flour improver, or let's talk about flour correctors, having the starchy endosperm with good protein quality, where we improve the energy dense bread. But often also the healthiest part in the briny outer layers is left out. And this is somehow a pity, and I think we know the reason why this has been left out, not just by historical reasons, but also because of acceptance. We will discuss this later on. But having a full cocktail, I would say, of vitamin, minerals, fibers, even also fermentable fibers, sterols, antioxidant components, where we really can make an impact on the heart health, means the coronary vascular disease risk reduction type 2 diabetes, and gut health, digestive health. And for sure also weight management if we consume less empty calories. So you ask yourself, why is this so important? I do really think we have to look at also creating value add out of the byproducts at the milling. Looking at the components of the outer layers, there are clearly biomarkers which has been identified to look at the different layers, like the pericarp. This is the outermost layer of the briny part, mainly based on cellulose, where you have trimers, ferulic acid trimers, which you can measure as a, would say, biomarker for this layer. Then in the middle, you have the testa and the nuclear epidermis. There you definitely, for the whole grain, you have the alkylresorptionols, which is a measurement for the whole grain parts within a flour. When you go further down, it's my favorite part, the vital iron layer, with the arabinoxalan on the shelf side. You see this here. You have the picumaric acid, but also ferulic acid, which is more soluble, with the ash and the minerals in the middle, and sure also valuable protein, as we have heard before, and below the starchy endosperm. So we definitely know by biomarkers which part of the layers, how it is composed, and how we can identify them. Looking at the dietary guideline of whole grain and fiber recommendation, we already know what we have heard or read in the newspaper. we can reduce the risk of heart disease significantly. That's why in certain countries they have a claim of heart health labeling, also cholesterol reduction. Definitely it has a big impact also on the digestive health, also less cancer, specifically the colon cancer part, which we can avoid. And also what is very important, have a deep impact on type 2 diabetes, also by calorie values. There are definitely also recommendations for consuming fiber, not just whole grains. In terms of the European Union, you should at least 3 gram fiber per 100 gram consumption have incorporated in your food for a good fiber claim, or for a high fiber claim, minimum 6 gram or 6% of fiber within 100 gram of food matrix. Generally, there are different whole grain consumption claims, also based on the servings which are recommended. This is in place globally, depends on the different countries. There is different understanding about what whole grain means. Whole grain in the US means 51%, for example, within the flour has to be whole grain part. In Switzerland, it's about 97 to 98, needs to be whole grain, fully whole grain. But it would say it doesn't matter as far as you have the daily consumption of minimum 3 servings, or for example, 30 grams of dietary fiber, like here in Switzerland. Looking now at the different components of the wheat kernel, I would like to start here on the left-hand side. For example, on the prebiotic effect, I will talk about this. Meaning the arabinoxalan, this is non-polystarch saccharide, as we have heard from a previous speaker. Then we have a high content of phytate with a very high antioxidant capacity, but also phytosterols for the cholesterol lowering part. We have ferulic acid, also supports the antioxidant functions. We have phytoestrogens, these are specific lignans, which prevent specifically from hormone-related cancer, like breast cancer. Then definitely also, we have also minerals, vitamin, and folates. Looking at the key mechanism of the benefits when you take whole grain, it's mainly based on the dietary fiber. Is it the soluble part, insoluble, like the arabinoxalan, or also the cellulose part? We have then the oligosaccharides, part of the resistant starch, and the different bioactive components, which are strongly within the outer layer, the wheat bran. The dietary fiber has a direct impact on the large intestine, on the colonic fermentation. I will show this later on, but also on the glycemic index, which is related to insulin sensitivity, and later on to diabetes too. And definitely with the different bioactive components, we have a high antioxidant capacity, which is related to anti-inflammatory effects and heart health. Within the blood lipids, why you can also reduce, for example, the high blood pressure or heart health. And here the bioactive components are related to homocysteine mechanism. This is very, very specific and strongly related to cardiovascular disease. When we look here at the comparison of whole grain versus white flour, there we see definitely a significant increase of different minerals within the whole grain flour compared to the white flour, let's say 50-50-ish, in terms of phosphorus, which is not that relevant, but definitely on the vitamin level, like B1 or B3, which is quite high, or also magnesium, which is very, very important also for your nerve functions, or vitamin B6, or the trace element like zinc or iron. So you really see there are a lot of minerals, also trace elements and vitamins available within the brainy part. For sure, as we know, some of them are limited in terms of bioavailability, like the minerals, because they're bound to the phytic acid. So when you, for example, do a sourdough fermentation, you increase the bioavailability of the whole grain fiber and the flour by the phytase degradation, and you have the bioactive compounds and the mineral bioavailable. So you can work on the bioavailability of the minerals in downstream processes at the bakeries, and even improves the taste. But you see there is a lot of valuable minerals and vitamins and trace elements within the briny part beside the bioactive components. Looking here a little bit closer at the dietary fiber within the whole grain, the outer layer part, then we have mainly two different types. One is the cereal beta-glucan, which is mainly contained within oat and barley. Specifically, oat has a very high content of beta-glucan. And within the wheat, we speak about the very valuable arabinoxalans, where we have them within the wheat outer layer, and I will show you the beneficial effects very clearly based on the studies we have carried on, with a direct impact also on the blood cholesterol regulation, but also on the glucose level. Looking here on this fiber arabinoxalan within the wheat outer layer more specifically, then you see you have this in the outer pericarp layer, which I have shown earlier on. You have this in the peripheral layer also, in the intermediary layer, and within the vital iron layer. The content is definitely different with each layer of this arabinoxalan. What is important here to realize that the ratio here mentioned A to X is related to the arabinos and the xylose, this combined is the arabinoxalans, and this ratio changes from the outer pericarp to the vital iron layer. And what does this really mean? We have shown by studies that the lower the ratio of the arabinos to the xylose components is within the layer, the higher is the fermentability of this fiber in your large intestine. So we have done some studies based on Bühler processes very intensely to look at the different, let's say, cereal bran fraction and fermentability. And what came out, it would support strongly the message I did just explain. We have here the vital iron has the highest fermentability in your large intestine, producing short-chain fatty acids, and this short-chain fatty acid contributes strongly to your immune system in your body, in the microflora, and also creates the microbiota. And you see here the highest purity of the vital iron has the highest production of short-chain fatty acid, the butyrate mainly. And secondly, as you see this within the wheat bran, finally grinded below 200 microns. So it means also by micronizing this one even further, you get nearly the high fermentation rate like the vital iron. And this has strongly beneficial effects, as I will show you later on your large intestine and protecting also your immune system in the body as a dietary fiber. What is important within this arabinoxalan dietary fiber, you have different components. Here we talk about the phenolic acids, mainly the ferulic acid, which is related to the arabinoxalan. This is a part of it. You see this very nicely here by RM microscope, where you see here the outer layer. This is the layer of the vital iron with the arabinoxalan. And that's the fluorescence color comes from the ferulic acid, which is very, very high here. And this has a very high antioxidant capacity, which is related to heart cells, as I will show you later on. The same as with the fumaric acid, which direct impact also on your mental performance, and this is used also in sport nutrition. So you see very valuable parts within the outer layer with beneficial effects. But there are other components well known like the phytoestrogens. Here we talk about the sequerithanol, which is highly contained also within the wheat bran, and this has a direct preventive effect on breast cancer, as studies have shown within women. So you can wonder also what is coming out further. Here I want to show you the effect of the ferulic acid within the bran layers, as I have explained before. And you see here a very strong correlation in terms of the antioxidant capacity of this bran fraction containing certain amount of ferulic acid. It means, for example, here, the vital iron and the bran fraction have the highest antioxidant capacity related to the ferulic acid. Here you see this for the normal flower, which is much lower. And this high antioxidant capacity has an anti-inflammatory effect of the bioaccessory components within the fraction for gastrointestinal digestion. So it definitely helps us to strengthen the immune system. We have done this study here also quite nicely just 2 years ago based on different wheat fractions, and we could demonstrate that the wheat bran fractions have a direct prebiotic effect. It means also you have a bifidobacteriococcus in your large intestine, which protects also the body, but also helps to strengthen the immune system, and also different other bacterial positive impacts are growing strongly. Looking also a little bit at the effects of the dose-response relationship between whole grain consumption and cardiovascular disease, there is a direct relation with the amount of whole grain intake and the reduction of mortality in terms of cardiovascular disease. So definitely it has been shown it has a positive effect. That's why in the US or in Sweden, you have a heart health label also on the products with whole grain you can claim. That's the reason for it. You see also a direct impact inverse in terms of whole grain consumption on the risk of type 2 diabetes. For sure, it's also related to less empty calories, because if you consume higher amount also of the outer layer, not just the endosperm part, it has definitely impact on your glucose level and also the insulin sensitivity. Not just eating empty calories, which is very tasty, no question, but not always that healthy. Looking at the, let's say, scientific evidence, you always can debate. You always find studies, and even the scientists find studies where they say it strongly supports a message or it moderates supports a message. Even looking at hundreds of studies. But what we definitely can say, cereal fibers, talking here about wheat, but also oat, also rye, have a strong effect on type 2 diabetes, definitely also on obesity, and strongly on cardiovascular disease, meaning also heart health. And the mixture of whole grain and also fibers have a strong effect also on type 2 diabetes and also obesity, and the same on cardiovascular disease. So there is definitely scientific evidence that it has beneficial effects. Here just another short excerpt of a press conference we had just 4 weeks ago from the Health Grain Forum with the latest studies, where you see an impact. Certain risk factors moderate, certain others strongly. Definitely it has an impact also in terms of body weight if you consume a higher amount of whole grain. Also on the cholesterol level, specific as the low density cholesterol level, less on the triglyceride, I would say, picture, and on the blood pressure. That's why consuming whole grain has a positive effect on reducing the blood pressure. Sure, always also related to the lifestyle. If you are a heavy smoker and also in addition you do not do exercise, it doesn't help just to eat healthy. So it needs also a healthy lifestyle in combination. But also on the insulin resistance are directly related to type 2 diabetes risk. So you see there is scientific evidence there that it has beneficial effects. Looking here a little bit also at the process from the milling, I mean, I don't have to go here into details, but the technology today offers really the opportunity to produce a safe, a clean, I would say also a consistent quality of different whole grain or integral flour for different applications. And this is something we can consider further also in pre-treatment of the flours after producing whole grain or integral flour, also in downstream application like fermentation, there are opportunities to work further on. I want to point out here to another process here of Bühler on the peso mill, which I really appreciate because I have been traveling many times to India, and specifically in favor of this ETA flour with a higher ash and also would say bioactive and fiber component. And here you are capable to produce, I would say with modern technology, I would say safe and healthy also integral whole meal ETA flour which can be fortified. There also we see more fortification is coming up also within this area, like in India, but also in other regions. Looking a little bit here at the technical feature and advantages for the miller, I mean, if you look at the opportunities, you have processing, I would say, thousands of tons of wheat, looking at the byproducts of the bran, where it has a big value in it. It's worthwhile to look at different options to produce also, would say, integral or healthier flour. With most efficient processes, I would say on reliable technologies, with further deep processing of specific bean fraction, you can create a higher nutritional value and also a much more tastier profile enhancement, which is most crucial to be successful in this market. I've been working many years in the US to improve the health part, the whole grain consumption, and convincing consumer is always a challenge. At the end, it has to taste excellent, otherwise it will not be accepted. But you can also create value-added special flour with, would say, nutritional claims. Certain flours you even have health claim, but it's limited for the time being because the regulation is quite strict. But within the bran layer, you have very healthy components, also have explained. And we have done many studies, also clinical, where we show the benefits also directly on your large intestine, but also on your direct coronary vascular disease. But definitely it's also cost saving along the value chain, use of byproducts. You have a more sustainable solution, not just going for the feed. And definitely today, with the technology and the expertise which is in place, not just from the milling, but also from the application point of view, the enzyme technology, you can create, I would say, very tasty, appealing product, which is most crucial to be successful in the markets. What does this really mean here? COVID-19 will have a significant impact on our future life, and sustainable solutions are required. I would say one approach is make a better use of byproducts, valorization of byproducts. I would say secondly, healthy lifestyle nutrition, including food fortification, will become much more important. Just when you look into the media today, it's full of messages, what happens globally in this area. Whole grain and fibers with bioactive components coming from wheat, oat, or rye have multiple health benefits for human consumption, as it has been proved. And food containing fiber, especially whole grain, is the risk of cardiovascular disease, which is the prime factor for that, as I mentioned before. Obesity, which is the hugest burden in terms of healthcare costs globally today, we have to be aware, and improves the digestive health system with the impact on the gut microbiota. This is directly related also to mental performance. So don't forget about your digestive health. I would say 60% of your health if you have a healthy gut. And as I mentioned, food concept with whole grain and fiber inclusion with today's innovative technology combined with food application expertise meet customer expectation. And sure, you need a good communication also to the market, also to convince, I would say, the message and convey the message about the health of such products. Being also a member of different organizations like the whole grain community, also the health grain community or the FFI, I strongly support, I would say, consumption of fiber and also whole grain globally, but also food fortification in emerging markets. This was my presentation, and I'm open for any question. Please feel free to add your comments, and most welcome.
Thank you very much indeed, Herr Redding. This really gave us food for thought, literally. First question from the floor is from Doria Bud, and she asks, whole grain flour means all grain components are inside the flour. What about germ in terms of shelf life of the whole wheat flour and storage conditions?
Okay, I mean, the general definition, you know, the original part of the grain, if it's germ, bran, endosperm, should be contained in the final product in the equal amount. In the US, it means, for example, 51%, but the equal amount should be there, also a germ. In Europe, in Switzerland specific, it's about 98%. It should be always equal to rated, the part of the germ or the bran or to the endosperm. But often it's not handled like this, what we have seen also done a study within the European Health Grain Forum. So, but it should be bilegal, but sometimes it is not like this.
Thank you. I have a question for you. Obesity is a global burden with a huge impact on our healthcare costs. What are the main reasons for that?
I think main reasons, in my opinion, is really about convenience, time factor, you know, but also would say pleasure, acceptance, taste. I mean, somehow we have adapted to convenience, also eating fast, not taking time, not having balanced nutrition, and definitely also what has changed. I mean, generations ago, remember my father, he was a farmer. I mean, they had to hard work, so they had to consume high energy. Today, still we consume high energy, we do not move anymore that much. So my learnings of working in the whole grain area, promoting this globally in the US strongly, if people are not changing their mind and their habits, and also the lifestyle, this is a minor contribution. So it really needs to people be aware of this. What we have also seen, when you look at the whole grain consumption today, most of the people who consume whole grain or high fiber are people who are well educated, they have a different social status, they can afford the food. So these people are consuming healthier food in general, but also whole grain and fiber. People who are not that educated, they do not bother that much. You can do a lot of communication campaigns. It is difficult to reach them. So it needs also a mind change, but I think the entry point is definitely if the products do not taste nicely, I would say the mass of the people will not consume it. That's my learning.
Thank you. What about the aspects specifically of shelf life and storage conditions in whole wheat flour? Would you care to add some more detail on that?
Yeah, I would say today with the supply chain, this is something which can be handled quite nicely. I don't see this is a real hurdle, but sure, there are also options to treat the flour, but specifically looking at the industrial processes where, you know, nobody wants to keep stock. Talking here about Europe, US, they immediately process the flour to final products. This is not the issue. It might be an issue in some other countries where the supply chain is not developed. But their solution also to heat treat, for example, even the outer part, grind it and mix it back. But it's also a question of affordability at the end. But there are solutions in place, definitely.
Thank you. The next question is from Ali Tavernet, who asks, some studies suggest that too much fiber in wheat bran consumption has adverse effects on essential nutrients and vitamins to be well absorbed and excreted in intestines. Your opinion on this is much appreciated.
I mean, it has always said, you know, it's always a question also of the balance. You always find some studies who say that has an adverse effect. There's no question. I don't doubt this. Absolutely, as you find in every study. But generally speaking, it shouldn't hinder us to promote whole grain consumption overall and also high fiber consumption. It's always a prioritization topic. You know, if you look at the issues of healthcare costs like obesity, you know, we eat empty calories, for example, starchy parts. Then you really can question, does this play a matter at the end? You know, we have to go for whole grain fiber. We have to go for less, would say, empty calories, more bioactive components, as we have valuable parts in the grain outer layers. As many people, also millers, are not really conscious about this. And this I really find a pity. What I have seen, for example, doing studies also with this outer bran layer, with some bigger players globally, we have found out even in animal feed, doing clinical studies for horses, for example, or also for swine, it has a very valuable part in improving performance of racing horses, where we actually have a project selling this to the market. We also can increase the, would say, the survival rate of the chickens at the early stage, for example, all based on the fiber and the bioactive components. And I find it is a pity that we are not able to make a bigger breakthrough also in the food industry to make use of this brainy part. And that's why I think we have to work on this as an industry, but also product development and also application is key to create more appealing products. But if you think about, let's say 90% of the brand today is going into feed, or even some of them will be burnt. So we can question, is this sustainable? Looking at the margin of the mill, which are high, you drive volume, and you have the briny part. Talking, for example, about China, with this swine flu, they do not really make money, some of the millers, because nobody wants to buy the brand. So we really depend on the brand as a byproduct to create value out of it for feed or also food application.
The next question, however, is what are the main challenges to achieving higher whole grain and fiber consumption in your experience?
Also, I think it's really acceptance. I think it's less communication. As I said, people were not interested, people were not dedicated, it's difficult to reach. I mean, I want to explain a little bit if you look at the COVID situation in Switzerland. I mean, the government reacted promptly, they did a nice job. Then they said, okay, take over the responsibility, let the people decide, and we see what happens. I mean, most of the people did not bother. No, we have been hit by the second wave. And my experience is a little bit similar with healthy nutrition. It's not just say people have to be responsible, eating more healthier. We have also to put, I would say, certain regulation in place where the food should be more nutritious, also more healthier. If we talk about the healthcare costs, and education is a key part here to reach the people. But besides this, tasty, healthy products, appearing tasty products.
Two more questions for you, and of particular interest to me. Elderly people are more vulnerable to COVID-19. I think the proof is there that that is a fact. How important is healthy nutrition?
I think healthy nutrition is a very important part, specifically talking about gut health and the immune system. The immune system, this is really most crucial. For example, you have heard that people who have cancer treatment, they're very strongly affected by COVID because their immune system is weakened. By consuming certain fibers, as I just have explained, with the prebiotic effect, you really can strengthen the immune system. That's one thing. But sure, it's also related to the healthy lifestyle, not just to the nutritional part. But a healthy immune system is most crucial. And this is fiber, but also vitamin, minerals, bioactive components, not just starchy parts.
And final question from the list here. Does whole grain consumption replace food fortification?
No, it does not. I think food fortification in developing countries is a very cost-effective way. And knowing this, working in East Africa, I was just there 2 weeks ago, setting up this fortification program in Kenya, moving on with DSM. It has to be cost-effective. That's key. And just adding whole grain will not be sufficient. Also, as I mentioned, there are some limitations also in terms of bioavailability of certain minerals, for example, but also the threshold of certain vitamins are not that high. It will not replace, definitely not.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for the clear answers, Havote. We have one final question from Raj Kumar, who's asking, is it possible to make frozen doughs and ready-to-eat whole wheat products, such as bread and chapati, with good shelf life?
I think that's absolutely possible today, I would say the appropriate process, but also how you treat the flour. And also, I mean, we heard about the different flour corrector or improver you can use. This is also an area where we are working strongly on it to support the application part to make sustainable and long shelf life products, but also tasty, absolutely.
Thank you very much indeed, Walter, for an excellent presentation and for your clarity in answering the questions. That concludes our program for today, and I'd like to say a very big thank you to our presenters and to all of you for being with us, and to Miriam and her team once again for making sure that it all ran so smoothly. I'll now hand you back to Miriam to close out today's session and the forum.
Thank you so much, Mr. Peter. Thank you so much, Mr. Walter. And thank you to all our speakers and participants. I actually invite you all to open your video. I see that everyone is opening, which is amazing. So I'm giving you a few seconds to open all your videos. We are taking the last group picture of the day. While you are opening, I would like to invite my female team who are behind the success. I invite Sherihan and Muzna. So you will see the faces behind the emails that you received. Muzna was texting you, speaker, send your speaker. Hello. And Sherihan. So thank you to my ladies. Thank you to the education committee and chairman. Thank you to the speakers. Thank you all. We enjoyed this experience with you. I hope you did as well. And thank you so much for your messages we are receiving. Now we will be doing the group photo. I can see that almost everyone has opened. Whoever doesn't open will not unfortunately appear in the picture. So please open. I have Kifah, I have Tariq, Hassan, Khalid, Al-Murai, Stefan, Angie, Ihab. Few more seconds, please, to open your video for the group picture so you can see it in our social media. We will share with you the social media links right after we take the picture. So a few more seconds. I can see that almost everyone. Ms. Hajar, one of our speakers, please open your camera. Karim Boubès, Manoj, Zahir, Angie. Thank you, Karim, Ajay, Faris. Okay, so let's count to 5 again. I missed to thank as well our colleague Faisal. Hi, Faisal, remotely present with us. Thank you, Faisal, for joining all our meetings and supporting the forum. So, ladies, are we ready for the group picture to screenshot? Okay, so 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and a nice smile for the group picture.